It's that time again.
Yep. We are Team West Herr.
And you are the most important thing to us.
Team West Herr
Podcast. It's all about the team.
Welcome back to the Team West Herr podcast. I'm Clay Moden. Great to be back here. Today we're out on location in Orchard Park at the Toyota store for West Herr. And a bunch of Team West Herr members on hand today. Brad Gelber is here. Brad, thank you so much for being a part of this again today.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you as, you've been part of Team West Herr, but now we're doing this whole new podcast thing here. And it's really fun to have you aboard and really looking forward to this season, what we have in store for everyone.
Yeah, I'm just a big fan of West Herr, obviously been a customer for a long time. My affiliation working with the radio station at WYRK with West Herr. And over the years, gotten to know some great people, not only here at the dealerships throughout Western New York, but also a lot of the customers too, mechanics. Of course, we had the Blake Shelton show. So things have been very good with Team West Herr this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Clay's actually, you've been one of our best customers over the years.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm on like 10 trucks in the last 12 years. Whenever I go past a West Herr store, my wife is like, do not pull in. Yeah. Just keep going.
I'm pretty sure we have posters of you at the store so people know that Clay's a VIP member for us.
Honestly, it is good customer service. It really does come down to that. And I love the way that the employees are treated. I mean, who throws a party that big for their employees? So it's great to be a part of this team.
Yeah, we're really excited, like I said. And, we over the years, we've had some fun content with you. We've done some different series with your family. And it's really fun that we're able to tie in football now and kind of your background and what we're doing here and my background. So I think people are going to get kind of a very interesting perspective on maybe different from some of the other podcasts or things going on that we're able to bring for them.
So you mentioned your background, and I was talking to my kids. I've got a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old now who, like anybody else, is a Josh Allen fan in this town. But I said, the guy that I'm working with on these podcasts, Brad, probably has forgotten more Bills statistics than I'll ever know. So what is your background with football?
Yeah, so obviously, being part of West Herr, I work, for people that don't know, I'm part of the marketing team here. So technically my role is the social media strategist. So I handle all of our different social media, posting content, all that sort of fun stuff, the storytelling and all that. So that's kind of like my West Herr, hat, if you will. But I have kind of a mixed background too. I come from like a media background too. So I've been writing about the Bills for, over 10 years now. I started a blog back in college. Literally no one read except for my family, maybe if I was lucky. And over the years, I just had different opportunities come up for some different blogs locally. And it was always like, hey, we can't pay you, but we can get some people to maybe read some of your stuff. So, just been kind of grinding away at that over the years. And now I actually write on a weekly basis for the USA Today affiliate for Buffalo for football here. So that's really fun just to kind of dive in with that. And I've done some different podcast stuff over the years and things like that. Some back in the day, I did a couple local TV shows with Fred Jackson when he was here,
and
of course, Robert Woods after him. So yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. And obviously, social media world, Twitter is like its own, your own personality on Twitter. So some people might kind of know me from there. So it's really a cool opportunity and fun to be able to tie what I do on my day-to-day life at West Herr now into kind of my side passion with football and bring them all together, which I'm sure you feel similarly, but it's a unique opportunity and it's really fun to be able to do that.
Is there an angle when you watch football, specifically Buffalo football, that you're like, this is what I'm looking for this particular story, or is it just it generates itself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think as a writer or someone I'm sure when you're on the radio, you're talking, or even for this, you do look at it differently because you're looking at it. Even when I was watching Thursday night, right, I was at a viewing party with my girlfriend and her family, and everyone's really into it and having fun and maybe, having a few beverages, things like that. And people are just getting into it and excited, but you do keep a little bit of a different mindset because you're like, okay, well, I know I want to talk about this after the game, but how do I want to talk about it? And something I really enjoy doing is I love listening to the post-game press conferences because it just gives you such a different perspective on the game, like the way you and I watch it or anyone here watches it. Mm-hmm. Well, we're not Sean McDermott, we're not Josh Allen, we're not Stephon Diggs. So when you hear them kind of comment on the game, that's kind of where I get usually what I want to write about, because I'll watch it from my perspective, but then I'm also kind of using what I hear them talk about. So I think, this last week, literally what I wrote about was how the guys are not going to allow this first week one win to let them get off track from what they want to do this season. And I wouldn't have been able to really take that perspective unless I heard Josh Allen say, when the media asked him 6 times, does this change the pressure on you? And Josh said, no, it's 1 win. That's all it is. We're on to the next week. And that's what Sean McDermott said. And that's what Von Miller said. And all of a sudden I'm like, all right, well, that's what I'm going to write about. I'm going to write about the fact they're not going to let this get away from them.
I know in the 5 previous episodes of the Western podcast, we had a chance to speak with Deion Dawkins and a bunch of other players who said the same thing. Like, we know that Buffalo and we know the world has a vision of who we are going to be, but we're going to take it step by step to get there. And I think that's echoing as the games are unfolding here this year.
Yeah, and I think, talking about perspective too, like you mentioned to me before we even started recording, like, if you want to talk a little bit about what you do during the game weeks, I mean, you have a very unique perspective too, because, for me, usually I'm watching from home, or I'm maybe if the way I'm watching is a little differently, like you actually are up close and personal.
Yeah, so for the last 4 seasons, I guess it is now, I've had the chance to be the public address announcer for the games. And when I watch the game, I feel like I am an ultimate fan that happens to have a microphone, but I do have a responsibility when I'm there, because I think of that fan that's in, if you're sitting in section 300 something and the plays at the opposite end of the field, you're on the tunnel end, but they're driving toward the west side of the field. My job there is to make sure you see it and hear it in real time as quickly as possible. Obviously, I get caught up in the emotion of the game sometimes, and I don't want to get ahead of what the referee is doing. If they signal a touchdown, but I'm behind that, or if I'm ahead of that. So you got to kind of watch on a technical aspect for that. But you couldn't ask for a better perspective of what's going on. I've got some of the best spotters working with us up there. People ask all the time, how do you know what's going on so quickly? And I said, I've got some great spotters who are telling me numbers or players' names or yardage, that they've driven, or how far was that pass, how far was that run. So it's a great perspective, and it's really taught me the game of football quickly too. During the COVID era, there were no fans in the stadium. So I still had a responsibility to deliver the best game I could, because the guys on the field, they want that same experience as well. So it's a cool opportunity. And I'll tell you, man, when you are able to say touchdown Buffalo and you've got nearly 80,000 fans respond to that, it's very cool.
And
very cool.
I can only imagine, obviously, we have coming up now, Monday night's going to be the home opener.
Yes.
And I can imagine, just the intensity and the feeling for that. Even last year, talk about the playoff games and things like that. So, I think people sometimes maybe don't realize that not that there's immense pressure on you per se, but like that's still a responsibility that you take seriously.
And I take it very seriously. As a matter of fact, when I got the job, it was an opportunity that came along. I was like, I'll audition for it, and I ended up landing it. But I take it so serious now that and this is going to sound crazy, but I even try to train like I'm never going to be a professional athlete, but I like to keep my body as well trained as I can. Like I run now, I try to eat better, just because when I show up, I want to be top of focus as I can be. I'm not there on the field. I'm not sitting in the stands with the fans, but I want the experience to be the best it possibly can be. And I owe it to the fans, and I owe it to the organization to do that. So and I treat it like it's a game for me. I really get into it.
And I don't know how much Buffalo fans here want to hear the name Tom Brady, but we kind of talked a little bit about him off camera here, just in terms of where he's at in his career at his age. And, you watch that and you say, like, you have a birthday coming up. For people watching, Clay has a birthday coming up, and it's, you do kind of think about that stuff. It's like, I think about that. I just turned 33 last week, right? So I remember I was looking, and I was like, we were talking about it at the viewing party the other night, and I was like, someone asked me, they're like, how old is Von Miller? And I'm like, that dude has to be 38, 39. Right. Like, he's a grown man, a large man who's like, looks very mature. And I'm like, he is the same age as me. And I was like, that is wild to me, because you see these guys and they're just the condition they're in physically, mentally, the pressure on them to be, the most professional grown human being there is. And then you look at yourself and it's just such a different perspective. So like, you look at Tom Brady, I'm looking at Von Miller, and to me, they look very similar.
Right. So when they talk about professional athletes, anything over 30 seems old. You consider that Tom Brady is 45 years old. So I'll be 45 this month. And I think, like, obviously, don't take me wrong, there's zero comparison to what I'm saying about me and Tom Brady. But from an age perspective, it's still a human being.
Right.
So the day after the game has to be the most brutal part because you still have to repair physically. You still got to feel that. And if I've learned anything as getting a little older is it takes an extra day sometimes.
Yep.
I mean, obviously Tom Brady is a world-class athlete, but still, you can't help but think it has to hurt the next day.
And I'm sure it's the avocado ice cream that's helping him out.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sure he's got the best nutrition possible too.
100%,
So, and it's, you know, and if you mentioned like we don't take Tom Brady's name great in Buffalo, but if you look at it from any job you're in, whether it's, you know, the marketing team here at West Herr, the mechanics in the buildings here at West Herr, you know, they're working in the shops right here. You want to be the best at whatever you do.
Sure.
And when you watch Tom Brady and you say, this guy is the best at what he's doing, it didn't happen overnight. No. He works hard at it, so you got to give the guy credit for that.
And you know, we're talking about day after recovery too, and I'm thinking about the other night, you know, people were watching Josh Allen just take hit after hit. And I mean, this is a big guy too. Josh Allen is not a small human being, and he's very tough, very physical. You can tell he loves that contact when he's out there, and he's just gets fired up. You can see him. But at the same time, you know, sometimes people ask me, well, do these guys go out and celebrate after the games, like after a big win? And if anyone listened to Von Miller after the game, he was talking about, I promise you, we're going to take Tennessee seriously coming up on Monday, but we're going to celebrate tonight because wins are so hard to come by.
Exactly.
You have to celebrate them. He kept saying, it just stuck out to me. He said, we're going to make the plane do backflips is what he kept saying.
I love that.
But like people are talking about Josh Allen, what he's doing after the game. And I'm like, I don't know if if I was Josh Allen, I'd be sitting in an ice bath right now and just
chilling.
trying to recover because, you know, you think about going out and celebrating, but these guys, it's such down to a science physically and mentally, and they just have to get that relief to then move on to, you know, they talk about 24-hour rule. Whether it's a loss or a win, they celebrate or they kind of process it and then they move on. But that's, you know, for those guys like Josh Allen took a lot of hits on Monday and they played a great game, and which we'll get to in a little bit, but you know, you still think he's probably needs a little time to recover after that one.
So when we started the Team West Herr podcast, we had a chance to see, you know, Josh getting ready for his media portion of it, and we had a chance to speak to a lot of the players. But you mentioned guys, you know, that have been a part of Team West Herr in the past that go on. And I still feel like they love not only West Herr, obviously, for what they've done with them, but the Buffalo area. You know, you see a guy like Fred Jackson will be a Buffalo guy forever. A Steve Tasker, they will be Buffalo people forever. They didn't start out here, but it is now their home. When you hear Josh Allen say blue cheese during a play, it sells the fact that this guy is Buffalo.
100%. And I think, you know, I think we've seen it more and more as his career's now progressed. You know, he came to Buffalo and it was like you were just thinking he's the perfect fit. I remember hearing that over and over. Josh is the perfect fit for Buffalo. And I think we've just seen it more and more as the time has gone on, whether it's just how he processes losses and the way he takes it humbly, or he speaks about the fans, how important the fans are. I just feel like everything Josh does embodies Buffalo, Western New York, the people here. And I think that's why he's so beloved. Even before his career, I mean, of course, we all had high expectations where he was drafted, things like that. But as his career's taken off, even before that, people they love Josh Allen, and he's become beloved. And, you know, he's in talks of being, you know, Jim Kelly and all these other kind of legendary Buffalo players over the years. I think that's kind of the thing for Josh Allen is, like you said, he fits in so well to Buffalo and Western New York.
And when we spoke to Deion Dawkins a few episodes ago, he said the same thing. You know, this is my home. I've created a home here. I don't just play for a uniform or a paycheck. He's now a Buffalonian. He's part of Team West Herr and part of Team Western New York.
Right, and he's actually, for people, he's from New Jersey originally, and that's kind of where he got this Schno moniker, you know, because he said he used to go out in the mornings and hustle in the winter because he'd go out and knock on people's doors, and he'd say, can I shovel your driveway? And they'd say, sure, we'll give you $10 or whatever. And he said that's literally how he used to make money growing up. So that started, if you've ever heard him on social media or in his he talks about you already Schno, some of that's like a Snow moniker from that. And he talked about, you know, he likes the area. That's where he's from. But like you said, Western New York for him is home. And I think that's like you said, a repeated thing. You just always see it. People come here, they don't know a lot about Buffalo or Western New York. They maybe have misconceptions from playing in the league, or like, oh, it snows here all the time. And I know you, when you spoke to Devin Singletary, who's a member of Team West Herr, like he was saying the same thing, like about being a South Florida guy. Like they use it to their advantage, being in the cold and the snow. But like, I think people just get a misconception if they've never been here. We see it all the time on social media and the media. People just kind of make jokes about the area or whatever, but the guys come here and they really end up loving being here.
So you covered the game, obviously, the Thursday night win. And, you talk to people. I have a brother who's in Seattle, and the first thing they say is this real?
Right.
Is this team for real?
Right.
Like, you could go anywhere. You can cross Southwestern Boulevard here, anywhere. Go to any store here within 5 miles. Immediately, somebody's going to be wearing some kind of Buffalo gear.
Yep.
It's not just hype, is it? It's the real deal.
No, and that's the thing, too. Like granted, over the years, people always get into football. Like, doesn't matter how bad the team is, they're gonna love football because that's what we do here, right? Everyone talks about chicken wings, snow, and football. It's that's like part of the culture, the DNA of Buffalo. But I think seeing a winning team, it's still hard to process because they've been good for a few years now. They made it to the AFC Championship game 2 years ago. Last year, obviously, they had that crazy ending with Kansas City. A lot of people thought they were going to win the Super Bowl last year, and now this year they've been nationally all over everything. Buffalo's the favorite to win the Super Bowl. And I was telling you earlier, not to pick on my girlfriend a little bit. Hi, Steph, by the way. Just the fact that she keeps asking me almost every day, like, okay, let's just talk about this. Is Buffalo really the Super Bowl favorite? And I'm like, I don't know how else to answer you at this point. They really are. Like, it feels weird, but it's the truth.
So I grew up in the era of the Jim Kelly. So when I was my son's age, Jim Kelly was our Josh Allen at the time. And I remember thinking that when Buffalo goes down the field, and even if they're down, you can't count them out. And that's the feeling I'm getting from this team right now. Yeah. Obviously, the first game out, didn't have to worry about that. But when you get down the field now with this team, you can't count them out on anything. No. I mean, they're solid front to back.
Right. And I remember watching growing up football here, and more as a fan, obviously, when you're younger, but it's just like you always almost had this like feeling in the back of your mind, if they did go up, it was like something's going to go wrong. And that sounds
When's
really
the other
bad.
shoe gonna drop?
Right. Because like I wasn't old enough during the 90s run for the Super Bowl. Like I think people in my generation, they were alive, but maybe they just don't really remember. They don't know what this area was like when the team was going to Super Bowls, was really good with Jim Kelly and Bruce Smith and all these guys. And then all they saw was bad football forever with the drought and just constantly always finding a way to be disappointed. So I think it really takes, we talk about Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane coming in here and changing the culture in Buffalo. I think there was a culture change for the fans too, because we're still getting conditioned to not being like, okay, like, yeah, we're good. Like, this is good. Like, Josh has got this. The defense has got this. And you're right, the first game we didn't need to worry about it. But last year, the year before, it was really a mindset shift of like, okay, like, I'm not worried. We're down 10 points. It's the start of the fourth quarter. Like, we're still going to pull it out. Like, we got this.
I do talk with family on the West Coast, and they're like, what's it like there in Buffalo? And I tell them, it's a lot of great energy right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fun city to be in, and it's a fun place to be.
Yeah, and I think maybe just like cluing people in a little bit if they don't quite know Team West Herr as a whole, like this concept that we talked about, like this started a few years ago really because of Josh Allen. And this is kind of like an internal story. I don't know how people like know how marketing teams and things work.
I don't
like
even know the origination or whatever the story is, the origin story of how that became a possibility. Because here you've got a guy who's drafted to a city and you guys jumped on him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because people may not realize like we technically aren't like the official automotive sponsor of the team. So it was like, well, we still love Buffalo, we still love football. So like, how do we kind of like come up with a way where we can talk about it in a way that's still relevant and makes sense? And at the time, really, we've had Steve Tasker forever. Everyone loves Steve Tasker. They know the West Herr guy. It's funny because you talk to people like younger people and they're like, you show them Steve Tasker and they're like, yeah, the West Herr guy, right? And you're like, well, he played football too, right?
Probably the greatest
like
special teams player of all time.
Right. But they associate him with West Herr because he's been with us a long time. And, it's been kind of a running thing was like, well, it's really hard to bring in current players because they could get cut, they could get traded, they could not play well, and it's all of a sudden it's associated with your brand. So West Herr as a company has kind of always steered away from active players or coaches just because as a branding perspective, you just have to be aware of that. But honestly, it started a few years ago when we drafted Josh, and as a marketing team, we were kind of talking about, well, he's really likable. Like we said, he's really Western New York to the core. He's expected to be this big name quarterback. Like maybe it makes sense to kind of feel out something for him. So we sat down and talked about it. And, my boss, Matt Lasher, the marketing director here at West Herr, awesome guy, but he wasn't really a super big football guy. So he kind of deferred to me and said, like, do you think this is something that would make sense? And I was like, well, yeah, like obviously it could be interesting. And we kind of brought it to Scott Beeler, the CEO president here at West Herr, and just talked to him about it. Like, kind of, what are your thoughts on getting away from what we've done for so long? We thought maybe we would do kind of like a little social media deal with Josh and have him on our channels and just kind of feel it out. And Scott was like, no, like he's gonna be on TV. And we were like, oh, okay, like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, like he's going to be on TV. So Scott really was the brainchild of this Team West Herr concept from day one. Like, we had a plan and Scott was like, I really like Josh Allen. I really see big things for him. I want him on TV with Steve Tasker. And we were like, all right, well, if we're going to do this, we're really going to go all in. And honestly, from there, it's just blossomed into this whole thing. I mean, I'm wearing this right now. It's, we have a great affiliation with, a lot of people probably know Del Reed at 26 Shirts there. Mm-hmm. And we worked with them back on the original year to create these jersey concepts, which are kind of our play on, the jersey, if you will. It's our West Herr ones. But each year we've kind of had players come and go. So we've had some guys that have, Lorenzo Alexander, for example, great Buffalo guy, awesome community member, but he retired. So he kind of was on Team West Herr originally. And we've had another amazing guy in Harrison Phillips that we love here and does so much for the community. And we were honored to have him part of Team West Herr, but he moved on to Minnesota this year. And we still have our core team here with Josh and Dion and some of the guys we mentioned, and new member in Dawson Knox here. Mm-hmm. So we have players come and go. Obviously the foundational pieces are there, but Team West Herr as a concept is more than any one player or any person. It's just become kind of our identity with football, but also, you're part of Team West Herr. The guys behind the board are part of Team West Herr. Everyone in the store is part of Team West Herr. If you're a customer at West Herr, if you're an employee at West Herr, you're part of Team West Herr now. So it's really cool that this concept has just blown up to the point where it's not just football anymore. It's really who we are as a company now.
And it really feels like that family concept of the team as well.
Yep.
I mean, you could feel it at that concert that they had over the summer, and just what they do on a regular basis, from the shops to the accessory stores and everything. It does, West Herr, the team of it, does feel more like a family.
Yeah, and obviously, we started like, well, what can we do beyond what we've already done? Because, like I said, part of my job is to figure out what content people are going to enjoy engaging with and things, and video and audio and social media. And we just have so many channels nowadays. I mean, we all have our phones, right? Where we have a media studio right here. So it was like, well, what can we do more to bring kind of more to the people and the community? And it was like, well, why don't we start this kind of podcast, video cast thing here? And we decided to call it the Team West Herr podcast, which obviously, you and I decided we were going to do this together, and it's we've been excited about it, but it's kind of just this whole thing that's like, okay, well, we can bring football to people, because right now that's what everyone's talking about and everyone cares about.
Literally every corner.
Right.
It's everywhere.
But from there, it's like, well, we can do a lot more than just football. We can talk about all different things that matters to West Herr, all of our community involvement, everything Scott's doing for the community beyond just what people see on a day-to-day basis, what our employees are doing, highlighting people in the shops. Like you said, sales people, finance people, there's just like endless opportunities of things to talk about at West Herr. And I don't think maybe the average person knows everything going on. So it's really a fun way for us to kind of share that with people. But right now, obviously, we're going to be talking a lot of football.
And it gives us an opportunity to have some great guests. You mentioned some of the media stuff we've done. The Josh Allen Double, great guy. Love to talk to him. We're going to be talking to some chefs and some stylists, and it's just obviously a lot of people involved behind the scenes here at West Herr. The opportunities are great, and I'm just so proud when they said, "Hey, would you be part of our podcast?" I said, "Absolutely." It's just the next transition. And to be a part of it with football going on is even better. So I'm glad to be here.
And we're obviously happy to have you here. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least just briefly talk about what just happened here on Thursday night.
Absolutely,
because if we're going to talk football, we have to at least highlight the fact that Buffalo came out there and opening game of the season in LA versus the defending Super Bowl champs and clobbered them.
It was nice not to have to make an excuse for a loss, but we did have a few excuses throughout the game. So you get a rookie running back who drops a ball after being flipped on a tackle. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses for the guy, but to me, it's like, welcome to the NFL. You know what I mean? And then you get a pass that gets caught and dropped. And, it's an interception, but is it on Josh Allen? Or is it just, hey, I turned and there's a defender and I dropped the ball? I mean, those are the things that if we're going to nitpick about and you need to change, okay, that's where we're going to start, I guess.
Right, and absolutely. And I think, Josh talked about it after the game. They asked him, well, James Cook, how's he feeling with that, fumble early on in his career, right, coming to the NFL? And Josh was like, he's good. He's already mentally moved on. That's what you have to do in the NFL.
That could be the difference right there.
Right, but this coaching staff is notoriously tough on guys when they do not handle the ball well, because they take ball carrying security so seriously. And you look at a guy like Zach Moss, a running back for the Buffalo here, and last year he struggled and he was out for a few games because of that. So I think they really want to drive home there's a balance between not making mistakes, but also understanding that's part of the game and you still have to move on with that. And I think Josh, as a leader of this team, has done a great job of saying, it's all good. Like, you're going to make mistakes. You just started in the NFL. I made mistakes my rookie year, but let's keep it going because we got a lot of work that needs to get done this season.
We talk about what outsiders view Buffalo as, and it's like, okay, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Yes, okay, that's true. But Gabe Davis, you got to remember him.
Yep.
You got James Crowder now, who looks great. I mean, obviously Isaiah McKenzie.
Yep.
It's more than just the two guys on the offensive side of the ball.
Right, and then we haven't even mentioned some of the running backs with Devin Singletary, and now you have, oh, by the way, Dawson Knox, who's now one of the 5 highest paid tight ends in the league for a reason. I mean, he had a great year last year. So I think I've talked about this to people too before. It's not just so much about, okay, Josh Allen anymore. And it's like, how is Josh going to decide how to use all these weapons on offense? It's like, it's just endless at this point. It's just, and it's a good thing. And it's also like a bad thing in the sense that like he has to figure out a way to move the ball around, which he does really well when he gets comfortable. You could see it the other night. He starts hitting all different guys throughout the game. But yeah, it's one of those things where the rich get richer in a sense. It's like you see like all the rumors about Odell Beckham Jr. and some of these, now they got an Adrian Peterson, a legendary running back, talking about he hopes to maybe sign with Buffalo this year.
They all want
so
part
it's
of it.
Everyone, because they see what's happening here, right? They see the gold right there at the end of the rainbow, so they all want to be a part of it.
It's funny you mentioned that because I did hear some discussion, if you talk at the water cooler the day after the game and everything, and people are like, well, you brought in Von Miller, but did we need to?
Right.
He's not, is he the savior of this defensive side of the ball? What do you think? I mean, is it like, obviously the Bills are that much better with him.
Right.
Buffalo is that much better with him, but is that the savior that they needed right there?
Right, and one of the things when we talk about like highlights of the game, the defensive line performance was so impactful in that game, and that's something, the Achilles heel, if you will, or whatnot, over these last few years was like, well, this team is so good on offense now with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and these weapons, and the defense is obviously one of the best secondaries in the league, and you got Trey White, who obviously is hurt right now, but you got the safeties, you got some of the young linebackers, these guys, they're really solid across the board. Special teams, Tyler Bass is here now. It's like, what's the weakness of this team? And the one weakness has been the defensive line play, getting after the quarterback. And hello, Von Miller, right? Like literally the first game he's here, you already see the impact he's having, and it's not even just him as an entity getting after the quarterback, which he's paid to do. It's him being an on-field coach and a mentor to some of these younger guys like Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa, some of these younger players around him that already last game you could tell the impact he's having, whether it was in training camp, on the field, in practice. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's won it before. And guess what? In the playoffs, when inevitably it's Buffalo and Kansas City again at some point, and you need someone to go after Patrick Mahomes now, You got your guy.
You got him. And when you talk about the athleticism, too, of the defensive side of the ball right now for Buffalo, you got a guy, Jordan Phillips is 341 pounds.
Yep.
He was as fast as anybody, like a cornerback would be in that game on Thursday night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the guy just breaks through the line incredibly fast for his size.
Yeah, he is a giant. Like, you just watch him on TV, and the people I was watching the game with, they were all just like, how big is that guy? And I'm like, he just
huge.
is so fast. And for people maybe that aren't aware, like, Jordan was here a few years ago. He went to Arizona because he was a free agent, and good for him, he got a bigger contract and decided to move on, and things didn't really work out, some injuries there. And this offseason, he just comes back to Buffalo and is picking right up from where he left off. And he posted on social media something along the lines of how quickly they forget, because this guy can play football, and he's another beneficiary of this defensive line that's looks really, really good early on.
And very good, solid team all around. I mean, it's exciting. I can't wait for the Monday night game and the rest of the season. The hype is real, and it's great to be a part of it this year.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, obviously people are really fired up for Monday coming up here. Obviously, Buffalo gets a little bit of a rest in between, which is nice. They get the 10 days off, maybe heal up a little bit and get going. But, like we said, right around the corner here, it's going to be rocking, and you'll be right there at the 40-yard line, you said?
I can't wait, 40-yard line, to welcome the crowd, welcome the team, and kick off what is going to be an exciting year right here at home, getting ready for a brand new stadium. I mean, all the excitement with Team West Herr, man. Let's go.
Yeah.
The fall in Buffalo, let's go.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, we have a really fun season coming up. Some of the guests you mentioned, and I really hope people really give us a shot here to listen to us and watch us and consume this content, because we have a really talented team, not just you and me behind the scenes here, and we're gonna bring something fun, I think, for people that maybe they can't get anywhere else.
Well, on behalf of everybody in my family, we're certainly excited to be a part of this, so thank you very much. It is Team West Herr, and stay tuned for some great guests we're going to be having football season throughout the rest of the year, and of course we'll see you at one of the stores around Western New York as well. We'll see you next time for the Team West Herr podcast.